Focus on B, the series where I spent about 20 or so minutes playing a game and also talking about it. This is Hot Wheels Turbo Racing. Wait a second. I've done this game before, haven't I? Not only was this the first ever game that I did anything about on this channel. This was the first thing I ever uploaded. But it was also the first thing I did for Vivid Noise. Well, you're probably noticing something. The game sounds a hell of a lot better. Its textures are also much more pixelated, but sharper. Higher quality, maybe. Well, this is the PS1 version. Yeah, to my surprise, I had, for the longest time, I had no idea this was a PS1 game. It was like it was a multi-platform game alongside the N64 version. Now, to me, the N64 version will always be the real one. And by real, I just mean that's the one I have nostalgia for. This is, I think objectively speaking, I guess you would call the PS1 version better. Again, it has better sound, noticeably better visuals in a weird way. Like, they're not as smooth, but the cars look a lot better actually. Everything is much more vibrant, and there's a lot more visual detail overall. And not only that, but it also has more content. This version of the game has free additional tracks. Now, they don't actually appear in the standard career, like, sort of, you know, Hot Wheels Cup mode, so they almost feel like maybe they were added later into development when they realized just how much space they were working with. Like, hey guys, we got like 200 megs left over, let's just put that shit in there. But at the same time, though, I can't say they're my favorite in terms of level design. Actually, no, the track design is okay, especially on two of them. I'm going to show all of them off. I'm only doing this one for this track that's already in the N64 version as well for the first race, but then we'll go over to the exclusive tracks just to show them off, right? So, what exactly is different about this version other than those things? Not much, actually. The performance is... oh, for fuck's sake. The performance obviously isn't quite as good. That's just inherent, right? The PS1, even though it had generally better support, the games that ran better on N64 ran a lot better. And that's the weird thing. The N64 was very inconsistent with that. I was just playing some Revolt. The N64 version of Revolt. I grew up with the PC version, so I was expecting like, oh, fuck. Alright, let's try the N64 version. It's gonna be real bad. No, actually, apart from it looking just a little worse, it runs super well. Weirdly enough, though, I've seen reviews of it, and apparently it doesn't run that great. And I was thinking, okay, maybe it's just Project 64 making it run nicer, but no, because Beetle Adventure Racing runs like shit on that thing. That's just how it's supposed to be. It's because it's an N64 racing game with some pretty decent visuals, it just kind of runs like ass, as you would expect. But no. Revolt runs really well, and this game on N64 also runs super good. I noticed that a lot of my favorite games that are from this generation are just the ones that perform well, you know? They feel the least console, if that makes sense, because consoles generally, at least they used to be sort of associated with lower frame rates, although not necessarily that wouldn't always be the case. There's plenty of PS2 games that run well, plenty of PS3 games and 360, and, you know, every generation has its games that perform better than others. It's just kind of the truth of it, even on PC, right? I'm not talking about your PC not being good enough. No, I mean, there's some games that just for whatever fucking reason will limit the FPS or will mess with the physics and make it so that certain things can't run quite as fast or certain animations are off. You get what I mean? Oh, I totally forgot. You have multiple camera modes. If you want to die, you use this one because this is not the appropriate camera angle for a game like Hot Wheels Turbo Racing in the slightest. Also, just realized the game, no, I think it's actually recording at a decent volume. I've just got it turned down kind of quiet on my speakers. But that's okay, though. Speaking of which, you know, I don't think I've talked about the soundtrack for this game, even in my Vivid Noise episodes, with how just out of pocket it is. Think of it, because it's like, you have this brand that's very popular with, like, you know, preteen boys primarily, and so you would expect some, like, maybe late 90s pop punk and stuff, as opposed to any other decade, considering this game came out in 1999. But no, you know what they put on the soundtrack? They put some, like, insane experimental drum and bass and electronica. Metallica is on here, actually, exclusive to this version. Of course, it's, you know, Fuel, give me Fuel, give me, you know, I'm not gonna sing, I don't want a copyright strike, but of course it makes sense they would use that song of all things, even though it was already kind of old at that point, but I guess it fits better than S&M. Although, I think 1999 was also the same year they released their Big Garage Inc. cover album. And that one also, yeah. there's voice acting as well. I mean, the original, the N64, I say the original, the N64 version also had voice clips. However, they were far more limited, as you would expect. Let's use this guy. I want to drive all the cars that I've never driven in this game before. Honestly, there's a lot of vehicles that I've just never used because I think I've already talked about this before, but basically my first introduction to this game was via this guy. His name's Blaine Lightning, I think, his playthrough of the game from like the classic era of YouTube, the 240p era, you know what I mean? And he used very specific cars for specific tracks. So I've just got it in my head that that's how I have to play this game. No, you don't have to play the game that way, but it always feels kind of weird when I'm not using those cars on the appropriate track. But seeing as this this track wasn't in the N64 version, then whatever, we're just gonna use whatever we can. Wait, no, hold on. The game actually specifically wants you to take. Oh, fuck off! No, I'm not restarting the race because, well, that triggers an entirely new loading sequence, which I cannot believe that is the case. I know the PS1 was kind of infamous as it was an early CD-based system, so it was infamous for its loading times. Now, it was the best of them. Obviously, it's better than the 3DO, no doubt, better than the CDI, no doubt, but it still wasn't free from some of the inherent issues of just having to load a bunch of shit, which is why I've always felt that N64 kind of held up in a weird way better, because it allows for a much smoother experience. Not only did some games just straight up run better on the thing, but they had basically no loading. Again, it's why I will never go back to the PS1 version of Quake 2, especially considering that it's just the same as the PC version, but just with even more loading. Whereas the N64 version is not only its own thing, which to be fair is now available via Night Dive Studios, but you know, still, back then it wasn't. And so it not only was original, but it also had like no loading times, and that's the great thing, right? Same thing here. The N64 version of this game basically has no loading. I mean, it does have a little, it has a splash screen, yes, you see it for a few seconds, but that's it. You just get a little whoom, just a little engine noise, and you're done. Like, the whole game, the whole race is ready to go. And I kind of like the way the music is big crunched and like sort of, not big crunched, it's not the right word, but it's been cut down. I think it gives it a lot of character, because now just listening to the songs as a whole, they're really great, and I love how bizarre the choices of music are, really. Like, I really was not expecting this. There's so many PS1 games, especially because of the CD-based format, they could do that. So many games from this generation that just had, I don't want to say bad soundtracks necessarily, but so typical soundtracks. I was playing Test Drive 6 the other day. I think I'm going to do a video on it. I've already made the thumbnail for it. Yes, I am going to do a video on it. And goddamn, I mean, I will never want to listen to "Here in My Car, I Feel Safest of All." Like, holy shit, I never want to listen to that ever again. It's like, it's the song that plays like 90% of the time, and the rest of the soundtrack is kind of okay. There was this weird like pop punk sort of skate punk song. Not skate punk. I don't remember anything about it other than like the music video being really bad, because of course it would be. But still, it was so typical. Although, for whatever reason, Test Drive 4, I believe, had this massive, like 9 or so minute song by Orbital, this drum and, well, already really drum and bass, or more like trance, this electronic band, and it's insane. It's like one of the coolest things you'll ever listen to. I don't really listen to that kind of music a lot, even though I do make quite a bit of electronic music. It's interesting how it's like I'm not the biggest fan of listening to it, but I like making it just because the tools at hand, and yeah, it's fun. But still. And so with this game, it just really caught me off guard with how its soundtrack is so different. It's got these, like, listen to this shit. Those screams, those samples, that, like, guitar harmonic that's just been copy-pasted a billion times like that, it just sounds so different. And it doesn't actually sound dated. You know, you could say, oh, that's so 90s, dude. It doesn't sound so 90s. This actually still sounds current in a weird way. None of the music in this version, no, in this game in general, regardless of version, none of it really sounds old, if that makes sense. Or not necessarily old. There's actually a lot of rock in here that sounds very classic and kind of old, but not dated to the year 1999 old. More so classic, if that makes sense, right? Especially the PS1 version has a lot more of it, of course. There's also this one really cool song with the saxophone going on, like, I can actually just scroll right through them. I'm not going to do that, though, because I don't want to, you know, play out too much at once, especially because, like, basically, this song is probably less likely to make YouTube angry when I upload this. especially because I'm talking over it and there's all these sound effects and it's going to be kind of quiet in the mix, so, you know, hopefully nothing bad will happen. But anyway, although if Fuel comes on, I'm definitely changing that, mainly because there's lyrics, right? And you don't really want lyrics when you're already talking over the damn thing. That's why I would always do that. When I play a game with music like that, I don't turn it off just because of copyright. I turn it off primarily because, you know, because I don't want people getting confused when they're listening to fucking James going, turn on, I see red, and I'm over here trying to talk about random things that I think are worth talking about. So, regardless of that, you know what else I found really interesting that I'm going to discuss further in my my Revolt video when I eventually do that, because I'm definitely going to do, a video on the different versions of Revolt, because it wasn't just on PC, right? And something I find really interesting is how there's like this weird balance between the level of developer support and the capabilities of the system that have to be met. Because the thing about the PS1 is that it was let's do with this one because it's a little more interesting. It was definitely the least capable system of its time. If there was like a tier list of the consoles of the late 90s that had like a certain level of power, it would go Dreamcast, N64, and obviously PlayStation. I guess Saturn. Well, the Saturn wasn't part of that generation. Well, I guess no. Well, it's a 5th gen system, but it doesn't matter. And the point is that the PS1, despite that though, it had the best support because it was the most successful. Obviously, it was probably because it's the cheapest. That makes sense. And also, I think it doubled as a CD player. What's playing right now? Oh, okay. It's not Fuel. That's good. This song was also in the N64 version, but again, it's going to be like one of my first few times actually hearing the full version of it instead of just the cut down N64 version, which still preserved most of it. See, they were very smart with their choice of music, unlike something like Tony Hawk. Because with Tony Hawk, they chose songs with a lot of lyrics. And that's a problem because, you know, you start to notice when there's missing things or copy paste or censorship, and it sounds kind of like ass. Whereas here, most of this is instrumental, and the music on the N64 version is completely instrumental. Like, there's not a single vocal track in that game, and I think that was for the better. Imagine an N64 chopped up version of Fuel. That'd be fucking hilarious. That would be like, so I already know how it would go. You know how the second verse is turn on beyond whatever the fuck? Yeah, the second verse instead would just start turn on I see red again. Like, it would be the same verse, they would copy paste that, it would be the whole thing all over again, and then the solo would be maybe half as long, or maybe it would just be the same lick repeated, which is basically how Kirk Hammett writes his solos anyway. It would just be the same lick repeated. I'm sorry. Then a bunch of wah and pentatonic from this era at least. Then he started doing other shit that still wasn't amazing. Also in Saint Anger, he was just like mute. Actually, no. If you watch the documentary, you could tell that he really wanted to solo, but there was just no opportunity for him to do that. Though I find it really funny. I was watching it again, and he started soloing in D minor over a track that was in C, and I was like, my boy, were you not a student of C? Was he? Hold on. Was he John Petrucci's student or was he Joe Citriani's student? I'm not exactly sure. It doesn't matter. Basically, my boy, you should know better than to do that. But to be fair, the track wasn't playing in the background, so whatever. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the whole disparity between... So basically, you could have like the most powerful big dick system in the world, but if no one makes games for it, then so what? But at the same time, you could have a system that sells 1 billion copies, but it still needs to be able to do something. I think the reason why the Switch is doing and has done and will probably continue to, even after the next thing releases, it will continue to do well, because it strikes that balance just about right. You know, it's very accessible, it's super popular, but it's not completely unusable as far as hardware goes. Like, yeah, it's not a PS5, it's not even a PS4, it's not an Xbox One, or a Series, it's not even close. In fact, it's just about a little bit more powerful than like a 360 or something. But that's still enough, right? At this point, we're at the level where we could not see another major improvement in game console hardware, and we'll still have games that are totally acceptable, totally presentable, right? That's what made the 5th generation so interesting, was the fact that we weren't at that point yet, so shit was all different, and different systems had different versions, and was all just so bizarre and fun to explore. Whereas like, you go to PS2 and it's like, okay, well, the Xbox version is the best one. And then you go to the next generation, it's like, well, the Wii version is like its own weird thing. And there's also the DS version, and okay, admittedly that, I guess that sort of disparity didn't completely die off, it's just not as common. I mean, there's still, to this day, like, the subtle differences between the Switch version and the rest, and also, the mobile version of a game if there is one, although usually it'll just be a totally different game. It's nowhere near as good because mobile, and of course. But yeah, I find that kind of stuff really interesting. I think we're only going to have time for one more track, but that's okay because that's all of them. I mean, I'm going to be able to showcase every single one of the unique tracks that are special to this version of the game. So let's go ahead and switch over to the last one, which is actually a little bit simpler, but that's okay. It's this one right here, Serpent Sprint. Let's pick something else. What have I never used in this game? Not once. Wow, there's a lot of cars in this game. I forgot about that. I've never used the Silhouette 2. That's the ugliest fucking car I've seen. Like, it looks like an eggplant. It's the eggplant car, and that's okay, actually. Look at the resolution of those screens. You know, I wonder, does anyone have the original renders here at a high resolution on their hard drives? I'm super curious. I really hope that there's actually still lying around. They're clearly just screenshots of the game running in, like, maybe running on a PC, because it looks more like the N64 version. The thing about N64 is that it kind of looked like just not as good of a PC version until the Dreamcast happened, and the Dreamcast was just a PC version, except maybe not as high of a frame rate, because for some reason the Dreamcast could totally do 60. A lot of games didn't do 60, and I'm just like, why not? Right? Tokyo Extreme did 60, Sonic Adventure 2 did 60. What else did? V-Rally, I think? V-Rally 2 specifically. No, not V... Actually, yeah, I think V-Rally does that as well. But there was also... Ooh, is that a shortcut? Yep, this game's track design is actually very good. I think I've already talked about this, though. But what was it? No. Sega Rally. Sega Rally was also relatively consistent at 60 FPS. How was Test Drive 6 on that? I have to find out myself. I haven't really wanted to. I've played the PS1 version because it's like the least broken from what I've seen. But anyway, where was I? But yeah, like for example, Revolt doesn't actually run at 60. But when I played that just now, like before recording this, oh man, that was amazing. It was basically just playing the PC version. You were literally playing the PC version, but at 30 FPS instead of 60. And that's awesome. That snake looks really good, by the way. That model still holds up. And you know, something I noticed, I've probably mentioned this before, but I do love how this game has a unique name for every single set piece of the map. That's a really cool touch, you know? Because they're not like the most creative names in the world, but the fact that he sat down and did that, and it really shows just how much, I guess, more time developers had relative to... I mean, games are still rushed out the door, but because games didn't take as long or as much work to produce because of the lower standards of visual fidelity and audio fidelity and such at the time, especially considering this game doesn't even have like it doesn't have a soundtrack that was composed. It was licensed, so they didn't have to spend any time making music, just sound effects, which are very good. I love this game's clicky, punchy sound effects. But anyway, I just love the menu sounds; they're really great. But where was I? What was I talking about? Oh yeah, it's just they were able to put in a lot of small touches like that because they weren't spending 90% of development time animating the character's face. Well, actually no. Most games nowadays don't do manual animation. That's what motion tracking is for. In fact, mocap has been a thing for a very long time. I mean, so long in fact that there's, you know, remember Mortal Kombat? What was it, Deception, that had this guy called Mocap? With a K, of course. But like genuinely, like they had a character who was just a mocap guy. It was great. I mean, it was the funniest shit, and I kind of missed that. Actually, no, games can still sort of have a sense of humor nowadays. Also, I'm fucking dead. Go. And I'm already in 4th place. Yeah, I forgot. The AI, even on the medium difficulty, does not let up in this game. I tried it on the hardest difficulty for a couple races, and even with the Twin Mill, which is the best car in the entire game, just could not keep up. Insanely difficult. It might also be a little bit unfair. Like, it's just kind of cheating sometimes. But hey, that's Hot Wheels Turbo Racing. I love this game, and this is a different version of it, which I'm glad I got to showcase. And I'll be seeing you guys next time on Focus on B, the video series where I spent about 20 or so minutes looking at a game, talking about it, playing it at the same time. And I'll see you guys next time. This has been Hot Wheels Turbo Racing, 1999, PS1.